So whose leg? And I'm going to rephrase Joni's question, which is how come the leg is painted with tiny little dots? And are 5 flowers significant? Those are some good questions, some of which we'll discuss, and some of which I have to spend some time thinking about. 5 flowers, why 5 flowers? I don't know. Okay, so that is the corner of understanding pop art and therefore understanding Lichtenstein is high culture, low culture, mix them together, put them in either place, and you're going to see that over and over again as to what he does. When you take a trash can and you stick it on the wall of the museum, you are messing with people's ideas of what is elevated, of what is due respect, of what is degraded and what is not, and what physical objects and what images deserve to be treated with honor and with respect as being products of human creativity, and what is, well, it's a useful but annoying piece of furniture we have to have around the house because we have to throw stuff away, or a golf ball, or a tire. Well, a golf ball is more than just something to play golf with if you take a picture of it and you put it on the wall of a museum, or is it? Those are the kinds of questions that we ask when we talk about Roy Lichtenstein or Andy Warhol or other people in the pop art movement. Okay, how about that? How about that? It's a lot of what he does is sort of meta. It is art about art, and art about artists and art critics reacting to art. And even more specific, it's a retort to what other people are saying about his art. There's a lot of that going on in Roy Lichtenstein, and you'll see a bunch of that as we continue. Flowers are art, very common in art. And so he's saying, look, I'm sticking the art on the trash cans and the trash cans on the wall. So it's a little bit high and a little bit low and then a little bit high, which is very complicated. There is a joke. And if you've watched this video before, you can't say, okay? But can anybody see what the pun is in this painting? There's a pun, a word that's spelled different, but means 2 different things that sound the same. What is the pun that he's using here? What's at the bottom and what's in the middle? Okay, so at the bottom, we see a pedal, P-E-D-A-L, Dale has it. And up at the top, we have petals, which is P-E-T-A-L. So this is a villain from a comic book, and it's based on an actual comic book villain. Here's a villain. All right, so here is a comic book villain, and he says, what? Why did you ask that? What do you know about my image duplicator? So here's a villain. The center, to me, the center of this painting is the eyes, and he's staring at us, and he's angry, and he's obviously got a secret, his image duplicator. What is the image duplicator? What is this painting referring to? There is a specific image duplicator that this painting is referring to. Does anybody want to guess what that would be? Take a risk. See if you can guess. What is the image duplicator that this painting is referring to? Anybody? To a newspaper? Something related to James Bond, Andy Warhol, the duplication of the dots, the printing press, a mirror. These are great guesses, and I think they're all wrong. I think that the image duplicator he's referring to is Roy Lichtenstein, because that's what he does for a living. He takes little comic strips and he blows them up into big images, and we're going to look at him doing that a little bit later. He blows them up into big images, and he makes paintings out of them. So that is what he does. And like I said, a lot of what he does is self-referential, and this is definitely an example of that. We'll look at one more before we go back to Alex. And this is a famous Lichtenstein, so famous that you see it on T-shirts and mugs. Like it's well known. And you see the guy saying, I can see the whole room, and there's nobody in it. But we see him from the inside, right? So we see him, and uh, this painting is filled with circles which reflect his face. So can somebody count the number of circles in the painting? How many circles do you see? 4, 5, 4. Okay, many more. That's far too few. 6, 5 or 6. Okay, listen. I can see the whole, there's an O, room, 2, 3, and there's nobody, 4, 5. Then there is the circle that's raised. There's a circle that we see him through. There's his eye. There's the pupil on his eye. And then there's a little hinge between the door hole and the cover. All right, so there's 10, and none of you came even close, right? But so this is a painting about zero, about emptiness, and that's what we're looking for. Is we're in the nobody, and he's in the somebody that he's looking at. So, oh, damn, Susan, I was sneaky. You didn't think of the letters, but he did. I promise you that Roy Lichtenstein wrote that text on purpose.
Well, one of them that I thought was kind of funny and that you would get a kick out of was from Dale Rosenberg. He said, there was a Lichtenstein exhibit at the Met years ago. I walked in and was surprised that the art looked so traditional. Turns out the art was from the country of Liechtenstein.
Oh, first of all, they spell it differently. It's Lie, right? Mm-hmm. But that is so funny. The art of Liechtenstein.
No, there was a
Liechtenstein retrospective.
That's like that's one of those things where it's like you almost can't help but feel like, all right, they didn't really bilk me out of my money. I just didn't read it closely enough. It was spelled slightly differently. And then Joni wrote, and this is I thought was an interesting little tidbit, that he was highly criticized, as we were just discussing, but a friend bought one of his paintings for his from him for his room. I think it was original or a specific print, and then when he graduated, he threw it out.
Oh,
like, before he became famous, I'm assuming is what she's saying.
I will tell a story that shows you how much I love his work. I actually have a signed poster by Roy Lichtenstein, and it was on my aunt's wall, and she was moving apartments, and she said, David, did you want that? And I said, yeah, that would be great. She said, okay. And then she called and she said, I've decided to give it to my kids. All right, fine. And then she called back, I changed my mind. And then it came back, she was going to give it to her kids. So then a fifth time, she decided that I could have it. And I said, Mom, go. And we got in the car. We went over and picked it up because I wanted a Lichtenstein. And I currently am very proud to have one with his name on it because he is one of my favorites. To this interview with him, where you see his creation of his first comic book image, which was called Look, Mickey. And he's going to start by saying something that isn't true. So listen to this, and we're going to have to talk about, can artists be wrong about their own work? This has come up before when we talked about songs with drug messages in them, and we talked about Stephen Sondheim when he says that, gee, Officer Krupke, Krupp you was really supposed to be fuck you, and then they changed it to Krupp you, right? So we talk about, is it possible for an artist to be wrong about their own work? And this is an example because here he is wrong. We can prove that he's wrong about his own work. So go ahead and let's go to that interview. It's not a lie if he doesn't mean it to be false, but it is not true.
I was using a bubblegum wrapper, a bazooka bubblegum wrapper, to give myself an idea of what Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck looked like as I was doing rather expressionist paintings at the time. And the time I was working from a bubblegum wrapper that looked like this, and it occurred to me to do it straight without the artistic pretension.
Okay, so here's the problem with his claim that it was a Bazooka Joe type bubblegum wrapper that he based the comic, the painting on. That was where the comic image that he came from was from a panel from a bubblegum wrapper. The problem is we've never been able to find an example of a piece of bubble gum that came with a wrapper that had this image on it. But we do have little golden books. Some of you probably remember that kids used to read, these little golden books that have exactly this image in it. Maybe I think it might even be on the cover. So he did not get this image. It's really a stretch to believe that he got this image from a mysterious, non-existent comic book wrapper, when there is this book that was widely printed that had this image exactly on it. So I think that it's completely legitimate to say that artists don't necessarily know their own work. And there's another example. We talked about Arthur Miller in this class a few months ago. Arthur Miller, late in his career, wrote a play, or was working on a play related to the book of Genesis. And I saw an interview with him in which he said, you know, I didn't know a lot about the Bible until I started reading it to get ready for this play. Complete and utter nonsense. If you know the play All My Sons, and to a lesser degree, if you know The Crucible, and if you know Death of a Salesman, he is perfectly literate in biblical stories and biblical images. In All My Sons, there are things that you just wouldn't happen to run across. Now, does that mean that he exactly put it in deliberately? Sometimes you just pick things up from the culture and you put it in. So maybe with Arthur Miller, it's not exactly like what I'm talking about with Roy Lichtenstein, where maybe with Roy Lichtenstein, I think he just forgot. With some of them, I think they may be on purpose trying to tell a story. That may be what Sondheim is doing. And in some cases, maybe Arthur Miller just picked up biblical symbolism and imagery because he read so widely, because he was part of the literary community, that when it just showed up in All My Sons, it sort of was like exorcised through him. Highly unlikely. I'll bet when he was writing it, he did know what he was doing. Maybe he forgot, maybe he was hiding it. He was not a religious Jew, so maybe he was trying to say, well, I don't know the Bible. Maybe something was happening, but you cannot rely on what the artists say as the final word. It can be a very important input, but you can't rely on what the artist says as the final word as you would try to interpret a piece of art.
In short, sometimes the mind does tricky things. I mean, when you're dreaming and you sleep, different ideas sometimes scroll in your head together. And perhaps when he woke up, he had this vision of a couple of ideas and put them together.
Sure, and creativity is often about taking two things that are not usually together and making them together. The thing is, I put this with the Beatles jumping up and down and saying that Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was not about LSD. It was about a painting of some diamonds that one of their kids had made, right? And it is entirely possible that that's true. It's entirely possible, but unlikely, that LSD was not at all consciously on their minds when they wrote a song about marshmallow trees, right? And newspaper taxis. That wasn't LSD, that was just creativity. Possible, right? But if that's true, then I'm with Kevin that one of them had a dream, who knows what state they were on, where they had this image come into their mind of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and it did it just happen to have LSD as the initials? Well, I don't know what just means. That the artist saying it was because of this or it was not because of this is not something we can rely on. Hi, Dale.
So I was just going to say that my brother Joel of blessed memory was a novelist, and he had one book where there was a character I was sure was based on a relative of ours, and he was like offended that I thought that and swore up and down. It was not related at all to this person, but everybody who knew the person said that it was, and eventually he said, okay, it was, but I didn't know it. So.
Oh, but he didn't know it. Exactly. It was, and it took everybody else telling him for it to be true. Excellent, excellent. So I am David Benkof, and every Monday, not every Monday, many Mondays, I'm here with a free class on either Jewish culture or lately it's been mostly Broadway. But my interests are fairly broad, as you can see, from literature to photography to art to poetry and drama. And I like to help people sort of peel back layers and find things in a work of art that they might not have seen the first time that they looked at it. And I don't really lecture so much as I lead guided discussions and help you see things that you might not have seen the first time. So that's what I do. I have two other projects. One is called the Weekly Blast. Alice, can you go ahead and put thebroadwaymaven.com in the chat? You can go to that website to find out more about my projects, my classes, my Weekly Blast, which is got analysis and interpretation of Broadway shows. And then the third thing is my YouTube channel, which has about 60 Broadway and American Jewish culture videos on it, including these two about Roy Lichtenstein. So you might want to check that out. That is what I do. Eliana, you have an interesting question, so go for it.
I just wanted to know why it's not a copyright issue of him making his living by copying these pictures directly.
Yes, it's very complicated. It's a great question. First of all, he rarely copies them directly. There's always a twist to them. And there is protection for parody, although I don't know how much of these would be considered parody. But the fact is, it's extremely controversial. And among comic book artists and devotees of comic book artists, there's a lot of anger towards Roy Lichtenstein because he's selling his paintings for literally millions of dollars and they get a pittance. There's even a website where some of these angry people put up the Lichtenstein painting, show the original just to give kavod, that's the Yiddish word for honor and respect and recognition, that there were people who made the designs for the stuff that Lichtenstein did that was unfair. We saw this painting. Some interesting stuff going on. He talked about how there's an ideal head and an ideal arm, but they don't all necessarily fit together. It kind of looks like the arm on our right is like her leg almost. She's just standing in a really funny way. But the colors are weird. Like, so maybe at the bottom is that water and then the yellow in the back is the sky. Unclear. Who is throwing her the ball? Is she catching it? This is based exactly on an advertisement, right? Pop artists love to use advertisements. And so this unnaturalness comes out of the advertising mood that he drew on. So look at her mouth. Her mouth is definitely askew. That's not where people's mouths are. It's like this. And it's red lipstick, white teeth, then red tongue, then a little bit of white something and a red, right? So what does that look like? What does that remind you of? Her mouth, red, white. Anybody? What does that remind you of? It should remind you of something very specific. This mouth, it's slightly askew and it goes red and white. It's a clown? No, Rolling Stone's mouth. Think about it. What's going on? That's a really good guess, Alex. But oh, Kathy has it right. Exactly, Stephen. It is this parallel with the ball above, and it's so easy to miss. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's the only bright red in the painting, and it's both at the top and underneath. And it creates this, the arms and then her breasts. There are a series of V's. If you look at her mouth and her chin and the ball, it just sort of comes down here. There's a lot more to this painting than when you first look at like a lady catching a ball. So here is Look Mickey, which we talked about. And there've been a lot of really interesting interpretations of this one. But let me start with Ben Day dots. And you see them both in Donald's eyes and in Mickey's blushing face. And they are this newspaper technique that was invented by somebody named Benjamin Day. I think it was in the late 19th century. That was a way of coming up with shades. So instead of having to buy pink ink, you could get pinks and any number of pinks by just using reds, but having them closer together or further apart. And it was a completely commercial technique that Lichtenstein said, you know what, I'm going to take that technique and I'm going to use it in art and put it on a wall. And then, of course, the irony, which he was fully aware of because he was trained as an artist, the irony is that he's not the first one to do that among significant artists. This process of, if you come really close, it's dot, 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 all these dots. But if you step back, it's pink. He's not the first one to do that because Georges Seurat, the French pointillist, had done that very famously. But Lichtenstein did it in this sort of mechanical, industrial way. So that's that is the different. Now look, why is Mickey laughing and why is he blushing are two important questions. And the joke here, of course, the joke, look, Mickey, I've hooked a big one, is that he's caught himself, but he's really excited and Mickey thinks it's really funny. Okay, but coming back to the self-referential, what there's a famous painting of a Greek myth that is shaped kind of like Donald's position right now. So remember, high culture and low. This is totally pop art. This is what Lichtenstein would do, is take something from Greek myth and mix it together with Donald Duck. Who is the figure from Greek mythology? Anybody want to take a guess? Sisyphus? No. How about Narcissus? Narcissus was a famous painting of him looking into the water and staring at his reflection, right? So this is possibly complaining about the art world, that they're all navel gazing. And here on the right is Roy Lichtenstein giggling and going his own direction because he knows how self-referential and how what a closed circle the art world is. He is able to see that maybe there's something more. Or maybe Donald Duck is pop art because he's hooked a big one. He has created something big and important. He's on to something. It's unclear which one of them is the stand-in for Roy Lichtenstein, but the odds are he wanted one of them or both of them to be. Let's go on. All right, so who's on the left? The guy on the right is, there's controversy over what his name is. On the left, we have Popeye. Why is there a Popeye in this painting and who is he hitting? Right, Brutus or Bluto, okay. But who does Brutus or Bluto represent in this painting? Okay, and who does Popeye represent in this painting? I'll give you a hint. Who does Popeye represent in this painting? Pop art, good, thank you, Dale. I hope you got that before my hint, then I'll be more impressed. He's pop art, right? So here we have the new, fresh movement knocking out the past of what art used to be. The victim was conventional art. Good, excellent. Joni says his disdain is clear both in his work and by his thievery of others' work. Wow, that is strong words, Joni. Wow, I wish he was here to give a retort. All right, let's move on. So his damsels in distress are really very famous and significant and fun to look at. So we're going to spend some time on a few of his damsels in distress, starting with, it's not an engagement ring, is it? What is on Brad's, or this one isn't named, but he's often Brad. What's on his face? I think that face is whoops. You know, he may be saying, oh no, uh-oh, because he has taken a risk in giving her an engagement ring, and she may, or been about to give her an engagement ring, and she's just not happy with that. Oh, I have to make it full screen? Sure, I can do that. I can do that. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, so yeah, that's the problem with doing this, is I can't read the text when it's this small because there's something blocking it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so he says, she says, maybe he became ill and couldn't leave the studio. Okay, who works in a studio? Go ahead and give me some professions that work in a studio. Artist. Dancers work in studios, right? Architects work in studios. Actors work in studios. Okay, so musicians. So who is this person that became ill and couldn't leave the studio? Is most likely who? Come on, you should be trained by now. Who is it? The one that Roy Lichtenstein, exactly. Which is again this meta sort of ironic thing is that he's talking about he couldn't leave the studio. Well, maybe he couldn't leave the studio because he's busy painting me, right? Which would come to think of it, which would go back to Pygmalion if we're sticking with the Greek mythology theme, that maybe he became ill and so she's nervous. What does she look like? Look at her. She's wearing these gloves. She's ready to go out for the night on the town. She's you see the town behind her, and she's unhappy that he has not come. All right, let's look at some more. All right, this is a famous one. Probably my favorite damsel in distress among Roy's paintings. So she says, I don't care. I'd rather sink than call Brad for help. So my question is, give me an adjective that describes how she's feeling. How's she feeling? One adjective, you can't use a phrase. How's she feeling? Guys, okay. Despondent, resentful, spurned, despondent, angry, desperate, right? So it is on some level a painting in which she's thinking about suicide because she'd rather sink. She is desperate. She is miserable. She is spurned, right? There's something that Brad did to her that makes her not want to even accept his help. But if you look at the way it's set up, does she really look like she's surrounded by an ocean? On some level, she looks calm. Her head seems to be resting on a pillow more than that she's drowning, right? And her hand is she doesn't look like she's flailing or splashing. It looks, maybe she's sinking. She says, I'd rather sink, but there's a certain calm in this painting that you might not have expected if she was actually drowning. Now, Eliana says that she's drowning in her tears, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Norma correctly says she very well could be dreaming. Ellen says she's crying, and I'm about to shock some of you, but what are some interpretations about what's under her eyes? No water in her face. Interesting. What's under her eyes? Those could be her tears. What else could it be? Okay, some interpreters of this painting say that it's Brad's DNA, that this is a result of a rape, that she's had this really negative experience and she doesn't care, that she's willing, rather than go back to him, she's willing to risk her life. I know, like I said, it's going to shock you, but that's one of the interpretations that people have made. Okay, why is her hair blue? Hair is not usually blue. So why is her hair blue? Anybody want to take a guess? Okay, first of all, the obvious, easy, most straightforward, simple answer is they didn't have that many choices when you have to use a primary color, right? He doesn't use green. Or in this case, green would not be the color of the hair, but he does not use other colors. And in comic books, true, hair is often blue, but yes, it matches her mood. She is in a blue mood. It matches the water around them. It stands out. Good. So that is a big part of it. Her hair looks like the waves. I like the interpretation that she's dreaming, that she's desperate. We spent a lot of time on this one, so we're going to move on. But like I said, this is my favorite damsel in distress painting. Okay. Oh, Jeff, I love you too, but this is fun. I want you all to fill in the blank. Oh, Jeff, I love you too, but blank. But not in that way. Good, Kevin. I love you too, but I can't marry you. Absolutely. But like a brother. Ouch, ouch. But I'm in love with my goat. What? But it's over. Marcy, he limited himself to such a small number of colors because he was imitating what they do in the comic strips. Is they have red and then he turns it into pink by going red, 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 red. That's why, that's his whole technique. But I love your brother more. Okay, but I won't marry you. Yeah, so that is part of the fun of this painting. What we just did is what makes this painting special, is we're able to sit here and wonder, what is it that it's over between us? What is it that she means to say? Not only because of the text bubble, although it's a big deal. Oh, Jeff, dot, dot, dot. Every one of those dots helps us try to guess what's going on, right? So not just because of the words, but just looking at her face, looking at how she holds the phone, gives us a sense of how much tension there is in her body. All these things lets us go ahead and guess, what is she trying to say to Jeff? And I think that's part of the fun at looking at this artwork. Okay, so this one, why, Brad, darling, this painting is a masterpiece. My, soon you'll have all of New York clamoring for your work. Now look at him. He doesn't seem all that impressed. Either he's not impressed with his work, or maybe he's not impressed with her, right? But she is raving about his painting. And I showed this to you mostly because of the unbelievable irony of the painting, which is it sold for, ready, wait for it, $160 million when it was most recently sold. So it is a masterpiece and it is being clamored for by all of New York. It is one of the 12 highest price painting sales in the history of American art. So just a great irony that it's, again, a lot of meta when you have when you're talking about artwork by Roy Lichtenstein. I want to just quickly look at one of his war scenes. Wham is his most famous war scene. There's a lot of onomatopoeia where it's bam and pow and ta 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 ta. And here it's wham. The dialogue on the left is I pressed the fire control and ahead of me, rockets blaze through the sky. What does it mean? He talked about this a little bit in the interview, but what does it mean to put war on a canvas in a comic strip? So the answer is it makes light of war. Now, this isn't Vietnam. This was painted before Vietnam, but this is sending a message that illustrates about, takes away the reality of it, or it just points out how pointless or how senseless, childish war can be.
I really liked the last one because I saw that when I was a kid and I was just transfixed on it. Like there was no context for it. There was no, I didn't know it was by Roy Lichtenstein, but there was just something about it, how realistic it was and how like action packed, just like this one panel was. Right. It just brings back memories of when I was a kid. So I really like that one a lot.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else? And we can wrap up early. Oh, Norma says it's one of my very best classes ever. I'm glad that you came. Looking at the second room. Any other comments? All right, yeah, well, this was a lot of fun.
Kevin's got his hand up, actually.
All right, we're going with Debbie because Kevin already spoke. Kevin, if we have to come back to you. Hi, Debbie.
Hi. I was looking at the one that just sold for those many millions of dollars.
Right.
And what I saw before you said that it was specifically like this big major selling one, what my interpretation is that Brad represented Roy maybe early in his career and this girlfriend trying to make him feel good over a piece of art that maybe he thinks sucks. She's telling him, oh, this is a masterpiece. And he's going, yeah, right. You know, she's trying to make him feel good about something that he doesn't necessarily agree with because maybe it's new in their relationship. I don't know. That's how I saw that.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. Joni asks, she says, it always bothered me that he used others' work as a platform for his own. I liked his original works that didn't use Mickey or more. So my question for you, did I unmute you? I think I
Yes.
did. My question for you is, do you think Andy Warhol was better before he started using Campbell's soup cans? And if those are okay, why are these not okay?
I don't know. And I was actually thinking about that. I can't figure out in my own head why Warhol does appeal to me so much more. Even that Campbell's soup ad, I think because the interpretation of that and was so different. And I don't think Warhol was as overtly insulting and you know,
Okay, so let me
I
give a
don't know.
response. We're almost out of time. Let me just give a response, which is, for Lichtenstein, the copying was the point of the art.
Correct.
Right. So and that he's talking not just about the art, but about the society, right?
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't have worked if he didn't copy. If he took it, and like some of the Campbell soup cans are so far away from what it actually was. You know, in the video we show some Marilyn with like fluorescent colors or whatever,
Yeah.
right? So he doesn't do that. He makes slighter interpretations, but that's part of what he has to say about America and about culture. So Kevin, what were
Maybe
you going to
that's
say?
what's so discomforting, that
Yeah.
he's making all these negative comments about our culture and society.
Makes you uncomfortable. Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, really
Okay,
quickly, there's an analogy here. It's funny. I know nothing about Roy Lichtenstein before the class, and thank you. His artwork was great. But
Sure.
to me, the art world to Roy Lichtenstein is like the music community to Billy Joel.
Oh yeah, they see them as less than talented or professional. I hear you.
Exactly.
Okay, EJ, last word.
I think what bothered me about his copying was, in particular, the Wham one. The artist that he copied from, who probably is dead by now because he was like 90 almost
Right.
10 years ago, basically died in poverty.
Yes.
And the Wham was copied from his panel, and
Yeah.
Wham earned $4 million. So
Yeah.
that part I found troubling.
Look, in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a chorus line where the people who told the stories that became a chorus line sold their stories for $1. And a chorus line became the longest running show in American history, Broadway show in American history. So the question then becomes, who has the right to borrow other people's work, and do they deserve to be paid? And, you know, it becomes, it really becomes a conflict.